sheeting off of our Cat 5. Once we've done that, we want to strip back about 1/4 of an inch on each one of our wires, much like we did on the room stations. Once we get all of our wires stripped back, we want to follow the color code that's silk screened right next to where we're going to plug our room stations in. And it goes orange, orange, white, blue, blue, white, brown, brown, white, and then green, green, white. We simply slide the wires in, and using a small flathead screwdriver, we're going to tighten each one of them down. And once we've made all these connections and make sure everything's tight and we have no wires showing, we just simply plug it into the corresponding room station. And they're labeled easily right here, 1 through 15 for us. Once we get all of our room stations mounted up, it's time to move on to the door station. Now we're going to do things a little different with the door station. You'll notice it's not a Cat 5, and we do have our regular intercom wire with our shielding, so we have to once again remove the outer shielding. We're going to treat these a little differently than we did with our door station. Instead of removing these 2 drain wires, we're going to leave them on, and there is a place to mount them onto the master themselves. There's also an extra step that we have to add to this. Instead of wiring all 6 of these wires to the master itself, because the 2 push buttons, the yellow and orange wires, are going to our doorbell, we're going to add what we call the Chime Module, which is actually going to let us select how many chimes the appropriate door station is going to give us when it's pushed. The Chime Module we're going to use today is the MC3. The 3 simply tells us that we have 3 choices in chimes: 3 chimes, 2 chimes, or 1. We also have an MC8, which is going to give us up to 8 chimes, but for the most part, this is the most common chime module used. When mounting the chime module, we do want to use the supplied nylon standoffs. This helps keep the back of the chime module from coming in contact with the metal rough end. So we take each standoff and snap it into place in the 4 corners of our chime module. Once I get the last one in place, you'll notice in the rough end box there's 4 holes in the right top corner. We snap the chime module into place. You'll notice we have a plug hanging off. We're going to connect that up a little bit later. Now we're going to concentrate on putting the rest of our door station wires onto the chime module. There are 4 screw terminals on each chime module. One is labeled C for common, and the other ones are labeled 3, 2, and 1. Those numbers simply indicate how many rings we will get or how many chimes we will get for the appropriate door station. And once again, it doesn't matter whether we use the yellow for the common or the orange. We're simply looking for a completed circuit to make the chime work. Now once we get both of the wires connected to the chime module, it's time to hook the black and red wires up. Now we've connected both our red and black wires to the location that's labeled door, red, and black. Now the last thing we have left to do to complete the door station is to put in our drain wires. Those are mounted right here on the master, on the bottom right, where it says shield. Now that we've wired all of our door station wires in, it's time to plug in our chime module. You'll notice right next to each other on the master we have 2 4-prong Molex plugs, one labeled remote and one labeled chime. We want to make sure that we plug in the chime module to the one labeled chime. Once we've done that, our door station and chime module are installed. We're now going to move on to our antennas. We have our coax FM antenna, and it simply mounts directly in to the coax connector on our tuner. Once we've secured the FM antenna, we'll move on to our AM antenna. And it's a single wire, and you'll notice on the tuner we have 2 separate connectors. We do want to use the outside connector, the one furthest from our FM connector, and it's a simple push button connector. Now we're going to put the screws in the master just a little bit so we can secure it while we place the CD player in the rough end. Now that I've put the mounting screws for the master in slightly, it's time to move on to the CD player. Before we install the CD player, we have to remove the faceplate. As we remove it, you'll notice there's a single plug on the front that we need to remove prior to taking the faceplate off. Okay, prior to putting the CD player in, we do want to plug in the power to our master. Keeping in mind that this is not a live wire, I haven't turned the breaker on. We don't want to apply power to the master or the CD player before all the installation procedures are done. After applying the power plug, the next thing we need to use is our RCA patch cables. We do need to use both left and right channels for the DMC1. So we place the CD player and we want to make sure we don't crimp any of our wires. Now that I've got the CD player mounted, we're going to take the master back out. This is going to allow us to plug in all of our control wires and our RCA cables to our CD player. So once we pull the master unit down, the next thing we want to do is plug in our RCA cables. And you'll notice we have on the master two sets. One is labeled CD and one is labeled auxiliary. We want to plug our RCAs from our CD player into the CD one. Roll the master unit and our control cable from the CD player. This is very important. Without plugging this in, we won't be able to search through CDs or songs on those CDs using the master. And it plugs directly into the bottom of the unit. It's labeled CD interface. Once those are plugged in, we're ready to do the final mounting of the master. When we're tightening these down on the master, we want to make sure we don't over tighten them. This does have a plastic faceplate and it can crack if you over tighten them. Now once we have everything mounted back up, we want to put our faceplate back on our CD player. Don't forget to plug in our eject button. And then the faceplate snaps right in place. Then we want to replace the cover over our master speaker and remove the plastic covering. Now we're ready to apply power to the unit and test it. First thing we'll do is push power, and it should come up with one of our sources, and we can scroll using the source button between AM, FM, and CD, which is our option, and auxiliary, which we haven't used in this installation, and then back to AM. Now you'll notice we're on AM, but we're not on any specific station. So now we can use the tune button and it'll scan up to the next station. And to check it, simply turn the volume up. Everything seems to be working on the AM side. So now let's change our source to FM. Once again, we can hit the tune button to scan up. Once we're on a station, we can check. And we obviously have FM. Now let's move on to the CD player. We go to the CD player source. You'll notice here that it comes up and it tells us that we have one CD in, we're on track 2, and that it's playing. Everything seems to be working. I can check the CD player for pause, mode where we have repeat mode, repeat disc, and random all songs, and then back to normal. Once we're sure everything else is working, now we can go on to check the tone for the master unit itself. By pushing the tone button, we'll scroll between master volume, loudness, treble, bass, intercom volume, music volume, and back to master volume. You'll notice we have the intercom volume and music volume separate. That way we can customize the way the homeowner wants the sound. Do they want the music louder than they want the intercom calls, or the reverse? Once we're sure that all those are set properly, we can now move on to set the time. So to set the time, we hit the time button, and you'll notice the hours are blinking. We use the volume to set the appropriate hour. Push the time button once again. Use the volume to set the appropriate minutes. The time button once again will now scroll between AM and PM. We hit it once again, and time is set. Now we can move on to the intercom controls. You'll notice we have 11 switches along the left-hand side. Each one corresponds with either a room station, 1 through 9, or P for patio, or M for master. Now there's 4 positions we can put these switches in. All the way to the left means that that room station or patio station is now set on intercom only. If we move it one more to the right, now we have radio intercom. If we move it once more, we're turning either that room station or patio station completely off, and to the last far right position, now we're monitoring that specific room station, which means we're listening in on whatever's going on in that room. It's mainly used for monitoring baby rooms or if we have an elderly relative staying with us. Once we're sure we've set all the room stations to the appropriate level, you'll also notice there's one more additional button in here, and that's privacy. If we press that button to the in position, that'll keep anybody from monitoring the master itself. Now we're going to talk about the features of our room station. Now that we've gone over the features of the room station, let's move on to the door station. Now we want to talk about the features of our door station. Really, there's only two things we do with the door station. That's push the button, make sure our chime module is working, and then we can test the talk button. What we need to do is somebody hit talk or listen on the door from the master. As long as we're getting sound, we know the function of the door station is working. We've just completed the module in the new M&S Systems DMC1. I think you'll find it easier to install and more sophisticated and smaller than our previous models. If you need any additional information, please contact our customer service number that we've posted below. Thank you for watching our program.